Well, joining me now is Republican Congressman French Hill of Arkansas, who was on the call with President Zelenskyy. Congressman, thanks for being with us. Start by taking us into that call, and if you would, compare what you saw from President Zelenskyy to what you've seen from President Biden over the past several weeks.
Well, Brian, it's good to be with you. President Zelenskyy is earning the Ronald Reagan Freedom Award this week, and rightfully so. He's firm, he's consistent, he's concise, and he knows what he wants to preserve the freedoms, the hard-earned freedoms of the Ukrainian people, something they've fought for consistently for over a decade. He was very clear, and yes, he wants support for air support. He wants surface-to-air missile support. He wants additional support in the way of drones and anti-tank and anti-aircraft armaments. And these are all critical issues, and I'm glad that the U.S. is doing our part. But I think other NATO allies are joining us as well and making sure he has the weapons that he needs.
He wants an oil ban, Congressman. He hasn't gotten that yet. And the Biden administration appears to not be able to make a decision on it. Why is that the case? And why are they hinging that on being able to get oil from Venezuela or Iran or more of it from Saudi Arabia?
Brian, it's such a good question. I think they're tangled up in their own rhetoric about the Green New Deal, number one. I think they're so concerned that the real existential threat down at the White House is climate change and not the clear and present danger produced by Vladimir Putin by invading Ukraine that they've confused the mission. That's number one. Number two is that they're concerned about the impact on prices and markets. I believe we have to do it this way. We need to unleash American energy performance, oil, natural gas. Before the pandemic, we were producing 13 million barrels a day. That would more than offset the roughly 600,000 barrels that we've been buying from Russia recently and get our production up from where it is now, around 11 million barrels. That's number one. We need to do that through regulatory relief and by encouraging American entrepreneurs to get out and start producing. Secondly, I think we should rally other nations to produce more, like Canada, Mexico, here in the USMCA area, and the Gulf states.
Congressman, Zelenskyy also asked for a no-fly zone. He didn't call it that, but that's essentially what he was asking for. We've heard more talk. More people have come out and said, I'm favorable to this. There's a way we can do it. There are huge risks to that. Obviously, it brings potentially NATO armor in direct conflict with Russian. Do you think there's any chance that some kind of no-fly zone could happen in the days or weeks ahead?
I think it would be very difficult, Brian, because the people that could enforce effectively a no-fly zone are the United States and NATO partners, and that in turn creates the problem that you've outlined. I think what we have to do is get them the anti-tank, anti-air weapons into the country, and I think the idea of getting either Eastern European assets, MiG-29s from Poland or other former Central European countries that are now NATO members is a legitimate way to bolster the Ukrainian Air Force.
So we're hearing that aid to Ukraine is tied right now to things like more COVID relief. Congressman, that sounds like a recipe for aid not getting to Ukraine. Do you actually think that $10 billion that we've heard thrown out there will get to Ukraine in a way that's soon enough for it to be helpful to Ukraine?
I think a lot of Americans and a lot of people in the House Republican Conference would like to see that Ukraine bill pass in a clean supplemental appropriation and not be bogged down by all of Joe Biden's spending priorities. That would be my preference. If they can't reach agreement on these other spending issues on a bipartisan basis, then maybe we can do a continuing resolution and attach that supplemental appropriation to get the resources we need to for humanitarian and military purposes to Ukraine.
Congressman French Hill, appreciate your thoughts today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Brian.